Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If I could ask all brothers and sisters to please come forward and gather around right towards the front first, so that it's convenient for brothers who are going to join us afterwards to join the majlis. If I could ask all brothers who can hear me right at the back, if you could please come forward, gather around so that we can start the majlis formally. Few requests as always. If I could ask all brothers to remain quiet throughout the majlis. It is a very precious event that we are commemorating, so I would request all brothers to please remain calm, quiet, put your phones away, and if you do have phones on you, kids should definitely not have phone on them, but if they do, then make sure your phones are on silent so that you don't disrupt the flow of the majlis, inshallah. Please recite aloud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
All praise and glory to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, the almighty Lord of everything that's before us, the creator of everything that's before us and that isn't. And peace and blessings be upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
To start the majlis formally today, I would request our young brother, Muhammad Hadi, to please come on stage and recite the holy recitation of Quran al-Kareem. But Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali
Habib Khuda Khatm al-Anbiya Bulantar Salaw.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah, Hadi, we're very impressed. And if any of the brothers any of the kids especially, we definitely want to, the whole purpose of Senior Youth Committee is to encourage our youth, because we believe, and this is from the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, that you hold the future of our society, our community, and of course, our faith too. So we would encourage any children who would like to recite tomorrow or day after, please reach out to Brother Kafir or reach out to myself or any of the uncles that you see walking around. We would be delighted to host you on stage, inshallah, tomorrow if you'd like to recite. Please recite aloud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
I would now like to request Brother Ali Hassan to please come on stage and recite a Sawd Salam. But Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali
Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. They can cut my arms and my legs. They can take everything that I have. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. Every day it cuts me inside. I'm so very far from your side. I would give away these eyes just to catch a glimpse of your shrine. If I had to cross the seas and every desert in between, I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. They can climb my arms and my legs. They can take everything that I have. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I can tell you I'm insane in the love of my master Hussein. In this universe there's no pain that can ever keep me away. Every inch that I come your way, every beat of my heart will say, I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. They can cut my arms and my legs. They can take everything that I have. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. If I lose my family and friends, and my life is coming to an end. If I lose my feet and hands, if I can no longer stand, if I stumble 1,000 times, if the journey's 1,000 miles, I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. They can cut my arms and my legs. They can take everything that I have. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. I will come crawling to you, Hussein. Salawat.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah, this was brother Ali Hassan. I would come crawling to you, O Master Hussein alayhi salam. We pray that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you ajr for this ibadah that you've done today. And we also pray, I would request you all to raise your hands and pray that Husseiniya Youth Committee that has worked tirelessly to make this 10 days of Ashura possible for you, that may Allah grant their wishes and give them highest of rewards that He has in His Jannah for all of these brothers who've made this possible and all the sisters who've made this possible. May Allah accept our coming here today, yesterday, and the days to follow, and we pray that please bless us and our lineage with the love of Master Hussein alayhi salam. And please, once again, we pray that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten the reappearance of our 12th Imam Akhir al-Zaman Bawazi Bulan. Salawat. It is very highly recommended in Quran, and Maulana will inshallah talk about this, that when you do, this is, Allah is one and there is no sharik, meaning there is no party to Allah in anything He does. But there is one thing in Quran He says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا, meaning that Allah and His angels together bless the soul of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this salawat is no ordinary wazifa that you're doing. This salawat is highest of ibadat that we can do. So when you recite salawat, please do it loud and clear so that you get more reward for it. So please recite aloud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. Now I would like to request Brother Syed Ahmer Shah, the organizer for Husseiniya Youth Committee, to come and say a few words. There are a few announcements, a few requests. I would now request Brother Taqir to please come on stage and say a few words. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat.
Bismillah. Thank you very much for the lesson. I just wanted to say thank you for everyone attending these last few nights. This is the 5th night, obviously. A couple of things basically from HYC. I'm the head of HYC from the boys' side. The sister Zakia as well, who's here, and for the ladies' side as well, head of HYC there. We want to thank Syed Ahmer Shah for the lectures that he's been given us and the knowledge that is imparted to us. And I think he's mentioned it in his lectures himself, that, you know, he's just touching on the subjects, the historical oral criticism about Imam Khomeini, Najul Balagha, the Quran, all these things. He just touched the surface basically. He's just scratching the surface, and it's up to us to make notes and benefit and learn from there. So these are stepping stones, and I think this is the whole idea of Muharram. It's the time for us to renew our allegiance to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and develop our relationship. And so let's research about the words that we don't know or don't understand. Ask the person next to us, or Morana, or anyone with knowledge to give you explanation, etc. And try to understand who the Ahlul Bayt are and why we're coming here for these 10 nights. What is the purpose, etc. Later on tonight, we've got a question and answer session as well with Syed Ahmer Shah as well, after the Matam in this tent. So I've got some paper and I'll leave at the back of the desk on either side and some pens. So if you've got any questions, please write them down, your name, your age, and your question, and we'll share that with Syed, and you can answer the questions for you. The other part was about Niyaz. So Niyaz, please, we rely on your donations. So if you want to sponsor Niyaz, etc., please make a donation at the desk. Otherwise, or contact either of us elders, and we'll direct you in the right direction. When you're having Niyaz as well, please don't take it back to the main hall. Either eat it in the hall here or outside, but please don't take it back into the mosque or the banqueting suite, please. I would like to touch on volunteering, but I'll do that next time, because obviously I'm taking up a lot of Said's time as well. So yeah, I think I'll just wrap it up there. But thank you very much for your time, and yeah, please provide your feedback as well. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
Thank you, Brother Steve, for keeping it brief. But one thing I'd like to add, that these Q&A sessions are invaluable. So make sure no question is a silly question. A question must be asked for it to be no longer a question for you. So make sure you do attend that very session. And just on the subject of sponsoring Niyaz, I know most of us are, I can see that, my 8-year-old son is sitting here, and similar age group is literally behind. So I know that you guys are not going to be able to donate, but here's a task for you all. Why don't you ask your mom or dad today, when you go home, ask them for either £1, £5, £10, or £20. Make sure when you come tomorrow, you do bring some donation to give to Husseiniya Youth Committee. And you know what? This isn't because we are in need of money, but this is to encourage a habit of giving in the name of Abu Abdullah Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So we would like to start that tradition, inshallah, today. I would like all kids to go home today, and tomorrow, inshallah, you'll come with however tiny, however small donation for these majalis, inshallah, tomorrow, and then we'll give you the total count tomorrow as well, inshallah. Without further ado, I'd like you all to welcome our resident speaker, Syed Ahmer Shah, to please come on stage and continue with this topic, worldview in the light and teachings of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Please recite aloud, Narae Takbir, Narae Risala, Narae Haydari, Haydari. برائے خوشنودی محمد و آل محمد بلندتر صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد
وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ولعنة الله دائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. أما بعد فقد قال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إني تارك فيكم الثقلين كتاب الله وعترتي أهل البيت وإنهما لن يفترقا حتى يرد علي الحوض. صدق الله صدق النبي العظيم. أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I fully concur with the brother's beautiful words regarding the event and the organization and the volunteering and everything which goes into making these majalis successful. There are some unsung heroes always. And remember, as we were talking, that human beings need to be cooperative. They need to be ambitious, and they need to have a sense of sacrifice. And indeed, a lot of the activities these brothers and sisters are doing to help make these events possible is a lot of self-sacrifice without reward, which is material, but the reward is with Al-Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salam. Salawat. So the topic of the discussion today is the role of the Ahlul Bayt in creating a social order and civilization, Islamic civilization. The tradition I've just recited is mutawatir. It is a parallel tradition which is found within all Sunni and Shi'i sources. To the extent when we say a tradition is mutawatir, it means that there is a very high probability, or actually there is very little probability of it being forged, because it has been narrated by so many different parallel generations and so many people from different levels that they cannot all concur on a lie, right? So this tradition is actually the very epicenter, or it's very, very central to the thinking of Shi'i Muslims especially. Now, whichever persuasion those Shi'i Muslims are, and of course we are Ithna Ashari 12ers, we believe in 12 Imams, but you find that the other persuasions within the broader meaning of Shia, like the Zaydiyya or the Ismailiyya or the others, they even follow this tradition and understand that there is a role of the Ahlul Bayt in being interpreters and organizers of the religion and inspirations for the religion. So when we look at the tradition of the Prophet, where he says that I leave behind two weighty things, or I leave behind two very, very important things. One is the Quran and one is my Ahlul Bayt. And both of them will stay together until the day of Qiyamah. Now, the Prophet on a superficial level here is saying that the Quran never separates from the Ahlul Bayt. The Ahlul Bayt never separates from the Quran. You cannot just take simply the Quran on its own and leave the Ahlul Bayt, nor can you just take the Ahlul Bayt, i.e. there are movements within the Islamic world, especially the Shi'i world known as Akhbaris, who say we just on the traditions. We just rely on the traditions. But it is a balancing act between both. And in fact, there are traditions which speak that the Quran is more weighty, and that makes sense because the Quran is the direct word of God. It is totally unaltered. Whereas the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, again, we believe they are infallible. And this tradition also proves some sort of infallibility, but it also says they are context specific. The Quran is in every era, right? When you read it, it's right there, it's in your hand. Whereas with the Ahlul Bayt, they occupied certain periods in history. And each period is a lesson for us and an example for us to learn from. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about the theological aspects of the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because with every subject matter, the subject matter dictates the methodology you use. So, you know, when I'm talking about bricks and mortar, and I'm not going to suddenly use all sorts of abstract mathematical equations. I'm going to talk about physical things, bricks and mortar. So what I want to talk about today is the idea of the Ahlul Bayt in history, how they interacted with the environment, and how they shaped the Muslim worldview. Because we know, and especially if you read the Quran in a very organic way, when I say organic way, I mean that you read it with not taking a verse here and there, not cutting and pasting, not looking at one verse and saying, oh, it means this, and then you see another verse and you see so-called contradictions, or you decide to read it of your own opinion. And like in the lecture on the Quran, I said the Quran must be read as a whole, as an integrated whole, as an organic whole. So you get these very common themes coming through. So if you were to read it from Al-Fatiha all the way to An-Nas and read the whole Quran, and then keep reading it and looking at the translation, of course, you'll see there are generic themes. You see there's like a superstructure. The Quran is giving you some, and we spoke about that, the Islamic worldview, that there's the theme of the names of God, the theme of introducing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the theme of God being present everywhere and having activity in every aspect of the universe. There is another aspect where there is the aspect of nature. Then there is the aspect of human dignity, human freedom, human liberation, human values. And then there is this other aspect of guidance. God continuously says that we have inspired the bee, we have inspired different nations, we have sent prophets. And then it says there's this aspect of guidance. And this is where I feel if the Quran is read very, very thoroughly, with depth, with a bit of understanding, without any sort of biases, you will see imamah is a very, very prominent thing in the Quran. Very prominent, right from the start till the end, because guidance, the Quran is a book of guidance. As the verse says, تِبْيَانًا لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ وَهُدًى وَبُشْرًى, that it is a guidance and glad tidings. And it makes a lot of sense when the Prophet says, I'm leaving behind. He could say, as our brothers, the Ahlul Sunnah say, that it is the Quran and Sunnah, this tradition. And they say they don't rely on this particular tradition which says Ahlul Bayt, even though it's much stronger according to their methods of criticism and hadith analysis. So this hadith, the Prophet could have said Sunnah. But the reason he said Imama or Ahlul Bayt, and of course we as the 12 Shi'i, the Imama is a cornerstone of our faith. Imama is pivotal. It occupies a huge amount of our religious imagination. When we think of a Shia, what do they call it? What are we known as? Imamiyya. We are known as the followers of Imams. So because we are called Imamiyya, that goes to show that we have a huge amount of emphasis on the personage of the Imam. And when I talk about Imama, and just quickly some theological points, I want to just talk about historical points because theology can get very theoretical. We talk about Ibrahim alayhi salam. And in the last lecture we said that the Prophet himself considered himself a follower of Sayyiduna Ibrahim. He named his son Ibrahim out of love for Sayyiduna Ibrahim, Shaykhul Anbiya, known as the father of the prophets and the father of monotheistic religions. So as you know, in Christianity, Judaism, Abraham is a father figure. So as we said, that he says, Millata Abikum Ibrahim huwa sammakum Muslimin. That you, the Quran says to the Prophet, you are of the followers of your forefather Ibrahim, your father actually, and who has named you Muslims. In this regard, we want to talk about the Imama Ibrahimiyya. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Sayyidina Ibrahim, وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتِهِ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Ibrahim with a variety of tests to see how far Ibrahim could go, how much capacity he had to grow, and how much potential he had to reach the pinnacles of proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next verse says, فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. He achieved it, he passed with flying colors. It's like going from GCSEs, you passed with very high marks, you go on to a higher, better college. You pass with high marks, you get into a better university, Oxford, etc., Yale, Harvard. Anyhow, Ibrahim is passing all these tests. He's passed so many tests already. He's passed the test of sacrificing his son or potentially sacrificing his son. He's gone through all those stages. He's a prophet, he is a Nabi, and he is a Rasul. But then the next verse says, Inni ja'iluka qala inni ja'iluka linnasi imama. And this is the punchline, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that after all these tests, after all these events, after all these trials and tribulations, Ibrahim comes with flying colors, and what does he achieve? He's had the stations. He's had the other stations of prophethood. He's had the station of messengership. But he now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you are now an imam. I have made you an imam. And this straight away rebuffs that sort of idea where you say the guide or the imam or the prophet is even chosen by people. There's this idea that after the prophet, anyone who extends his hand and someone gives him allegiance is an imam. Or he somehow is able to use power, force, gather a band of people and overtake the land. He's an imam. He's a leader. But here, the idea of a guide who is installed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being installed. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that after all those tests, we have made you an imam. The next thing it says, Ibrahim asks something of Allah. He asks Allah, he makes a request. And remember, there were many du'as that Ibrahim made. He made the dua for people to come, وَأَذِّنَ النَّاسِ فِي الْحَجِّ, for them to come to Hajj. We have built this Kaaba. We've done all the hard work. Now, Ibrahim, raise your hands and make a dua. And we find, يَأْتِ مِنْ كُلِّ غَامِرٍ مِنْ كُلِّ فَجٍّ عَمِيقٍ is the verse. Anyway, the verse is saying that from every corner of the world, people will come to do tawaf and do circumambulation and to do safa, sa'i, to do all the rites of Hajj, because you made that dua, Ibrahim. Ibrahim makes a request and he says, وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي, will this imama be from my family? Will it be in my generation? Will it be amongst my offspring, my descendants? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not say no, nor does he say yes, but he says, لَا يَنَالُ أَحْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ, that my covenant, this sacred covenant, this institution of guidance and inspiration, which is unadulterated by the vices and lower capacities of human beings, will not have the zalimin in it, the people who do unjust people, the people of wrongdoing, the people of bad character, any dhulm. And one of the greatest dhulm, as we read from the Quran, is shirk. Anyone who commits any sort of polytheism, anything. And remember, a lot of these things have effect on people. Even if you change afterwards or you become Muslim, these things they call athar wada'i. Some sort of existential, I don't want to use big words, but some sort of effect on the individual these things have. So imagine you've led a life of fornication, drinking, etc., etc. You could change, no doubt, everybody, but remnants of that traumatic experience or of that psychological experience is imprinted somewhere in the back of your mind. It is somewhere within your soul. There is some sort of speck of that past life somewhere within the soul that can reappear and rear its ugly head, basically. So that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in order to keep this covenant pure that we have, does not include the zalimin. So in this regard, we see that anybody who has any iota of sin, of oppression, of tyranny, and tyranny does not mean that you beat somebody up or you drop a bomb on them. Tyranny means tyranny against yourself, against your soul. You transgress the limits within yourself, and you sometimes say, I'm very disappointed with myself. So in that regard, we find that the Imama Ibrahimiyya that continued in the line from Ibrahim came through the line of the Prophet, because the Prophet was also possessing that as a inheritance, as an inheritance. The Prophet was possessing everything that Ibrahim had, Nabuwa, Risala, and Imama, that high station. So it goes to the Prophet, right? And now there's a big question. The successor who takes on the, executes the will of the previous person can never be more, cannot be more prominent or cannot have a higher status than the person he is following. When we talk about the imama now continuing, we know that this imama is a station that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to his choicest people. And we believe that this imama then went straight from the Prophet, and this walaya that came from Ibrahim, as the verse has just, we have said from the verse, came straight, and it could prove infallibility, but I don't want to touch that subject at all today, is that it went straight from the Prophet and to his executors of his will, i.e. the imams of the Ahlul Bayt, right? Now the big question, and there's this understanding that people say the imams and the Sunnis always say to the followers of the Ahlul Bayt that the imams, you believe the imams are greater than the prophets. Now this is incorrect. The imams, according to the station of imama, are not greater than prophets. Right? Theological point. Why? Because an imam, for example, Imam Ali alayhi salam does not possess nubuwah. Is he a nabi? No. Right? Is he a rasul? No. He's an imam. I don't want to say just an imam because this status is a comprehensive status that gives you, opens up the keys to everything, but he's an imam. So in what sense we say they are greater than prophets, it's not to do with the word, with the station of imama, right? Because they are followers. So when we look at the fact that the imams, all the 12 imams are followers of the Prophet, they can never, otherwise in the Quran we says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا, that we made the prophets of Bani Israel imams that were guided by us. These were lesser prophets, right? So are we going to say because they were made imams, they are greater than other prophets who were not made imams? So here, what we are saying is that in terms of just the station, the 12 imams are not greater than any of the prophets prior to them. But here is why they're greater. Because they are inheriting a higher form of imamah. The walaya they are inheriting, the one who inherits the walaya of Sayyiduna Ibrahim is different to the one who inherits the walaya of the Prophet. So the walaya, the station of imama, and this is the only way that the imams can be greater than prophets, prior to our final messenger, is that they are inheriting the station of walaya of the Prophet, which continues all the way till the 12th Imam, the Mahdi. So that is the only way we can say that they are more, they possess this higher station based on the fact that they are inheritors of the final Prophet who has the highest station of imamah. Not the station that Ibrahim possesses or any of the other imams. The imamah of the final Prophet is the highest form of imamah, and that is what the lineage or the executors of the will of the Prophet inherit. It's that type of walaya. And that's a quick, subtle point. Getting to the point of the fact of the Ahlul Bayt, and I don't want to, as I say, dwell on theology too much because they get very theoretical and the debates are a bit abstract. And as I was saying, that when you study a subject, the subject matter sometimes dictates the method you use. And because we are looking at the imams in terms of individuals who existed in history, we want to look at how history unfolded and how they influenced history, right? So we see straight after the prophets, and the virtues of the Ahlul Bayt are undeniable. No person can deny the virtues of the Ahlul Bayt. We see that Ibn Taymiyyah tried his best to compromise every tradition which showed a high status to the Ahlul Bayt. Whether it was Sayyidah Fatima, he would say, oh, this tradition is weak. or this is Sayyidah Fatima committed these sort of errors and lapses, and he made some very, very grotesque remarks. Similarly, he tried to belittle all the traditions relating to Imam Ali alayhi salam, which showed his merits which were beyond anybody's, untouchable in terms of his merits. And if you look at the hadith with an unbiased view of all the hadith related about Imam Ali alayhi salam, you would see that nobody comes close to those traditions, relating the station and the potential and the capabilities and the virtues of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So historically, when we talk about the worldview of Islam, that it aims to liberate human beings, it aims to give dignity to human beings, it gives them a special status as representatives of God on earth and people who thereby have a higher responsibility towards other human beings and towards creation, including nature and the environment. And that's the most overarching factor in all of this, which gives truth and meaning to life, is Tawheed and the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how human beings must cultivate that relationship with Allah to create a very, not perfect, but create the best possible society they can create, which brings about human capabilities and potentials to the fore. What did the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam do in this regard? And this is the imamah that we believe in, and I firmly believe in. It is not something which was necessarily installed at Ghadir or usurped in Saqifa. Because this is the imamah Ibrahimiyya. No person can politically just make suddenly a few people band together as Saqifa and say, oh, X is Khalifa, etc. Now suddenly the imam is gone out of the picture. Because this is a status which is godly. It is there, whatever happens, whether you accept it or don't accept it, the imam is there as light from the sun is continuously shining. So in this regard, the very first event, and remember during the life of the Prophet, we have like events where we say, oh, X did this at Hudaybiyah, and we do know that as the came to the end of the life of the Prophet, there were certain events which made things very questionable, especially the tragedy of Thursday, where the Prophet asked for a pen and paper. And we know by looking at all the contextual factors, and this is very important, you've got to do some detective work, you've got to look at things and look at the probabilities and the factors that created the environment. It's the Prophet's final days, he's on his on the deathbed, and he asked for a pen and paper. He's not going to write something trivial. He's not going to write something insignificant. And the individuals that were around him at the time were fully aware that the Prophet is now about to write something significant that will affect the destiny of Muslims. You're talking about a Prophet who is writing letters to Caesar, and he's writing letters to the king of Persia. He's writing letters to them to come to Islam and various other things. Do you think he will be thinking about something extremely petty, about some sort of fiqh ruling or some sort of ruling relating to halal and haram? I do not think so. And that is why there was a commotion at that very time, because to me, it looks like the Prophet and we believe that he was going to write something relating to the administration of the affairs of the Muslims at his passing. So historically looking at the events, and I want to just concentrate on how we can be inspired by the role of the Ahlul Bayt in bringing about the Quranic and Islamic worldview. Because straight after Islam, the Prophet left this temporal world, we see that there was a succession, and Maududi has a book, Khilafatul Malukiyat, of caliphs and of kings. And of course, according to our Sunni brothers, there was the 4 rightly guided caliphs. But we know by the time the 3rd caliph came in, the amount of nepotism and the amount of getting relatives into high positions and administrative corruption was at its peak. And it ultimately led to the caliph being murdered in his house and being besieged by companions, people who had come from various quarters of the Islamic world, who were totally angry with his the way he was dealing with things. So the corruption had started then, and that instilled who? The Umayyad dynasty. Figures like Marwan, and figures like Walid bin Utbah, and of course Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan. All these individuals were related to that caliph, and they suddenly now become major figures in running the affairs of the Muslims. Remember, power structures define knowledge. Power structures define the ethics of the time. Power structures define the ideology of the time. So now we have this power structure which involves tyranny, oppression, lack of freedom, human dignity is being eroded, and the idea of God being sovereign is actually being removed, where you have this tyrant who wants power like a pharaoh, right? What does the very first, in fact, going back, the Sayyid Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam, salawat, just quickly whizzing through, because, and then Sayyidah Fatima, she's the first person in the history of Islam, straight after the Prophet, to fight for social justice. One of the major parts of the reasons God has sent prophets is لَيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. In that verse, it says that God sent prophets, He sent the heavenly books, He sent the prophets with miracles, and He sent the balance, all because, all of that God says, so that He can create, or they can create, a just society. One of the biggest fundamental, pivotal principles of religion is to create a just order in society that allows human and planetary flourishing. So in this regard, Sayyidah Fatima comes out. She wasn't asking necessarily for a small piece of land or some date palms. She was actually showing the illegitimacy of the order that was being instilled, and she was displaying the fact that injustice, the Ahlul Bayt will never stay quiet or accept injustice. So her statements, her khutbat, her coming out of her house, straight away made all the ruling order illegitimate, and she was the voice of the oppressed. What did, Jordah wrote a book about Imam Ali saying he's the voice of humanity. The very first voice of the oppressed to raise society from tyranny and remove tyranny or speak against tyranny was Sayyidah Fatima. And then we have Imam Ali's stage. How did he interact? Because after 6 months, some say he didn't give bay'ah from the start, or he gave bay'ah after Sayyidah Fatima passed, or some say he gave it from the start according to other opinions. Whatever the case, consider he was not unhappy with what happened, and Sayyidah Fatima had already displayed the illegitimacy. He still realized that we need to create a social order, a cooperative order. So he cooperated. He cooperated in the sense that not because of those individuals, but because he saw a big picture of Islam, right? And this is why when we spoke about deen in the Quran, it's a singular thing. He did not speak about, there was no Shia or Sunni or this. When we speak about Shia, is not a deen, and Sunni is not a deen. These are schools of thought within the bigger picture, which is deen wahid. Inna deena inda Allahi al-Islam. Simple, it's in the Quran. You can't deny these verses of the Quran. It means you need to read the Quran with depth, with a clean conscience and no biases. Key to understanding the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt in history. The next point is that Imam Ali was known as the chief qadi of the time. His many advices stopped so many problems occurring within the early Muslim community. It could have fragmented. It could have been totally destroyed and shattered by the Romans and the Byzantines and the Persians, who were much stronger at the time. Of course, they were defeated, but they were there, and if infighting had occurred on the very first day, and it had led to civil wars that we see at the time of the fourth caliph, Imam Ali alayhi salam, according to the Sunnis, and many wars he fought, if that occurred at the very first onset and instance after the Prophet's death, then we would have seen a different picture completely. Of course, in an ideal world, if the Imam became the Imam and was accepted and people recognized his virtue or left the hypocritical side and accepted, that would have led to a different story. But how history panned out, the Imam gave his counsel. He gave good advice that prevented the disintegration of the order within the community. Move on to Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. He brokered a treaty with Muawiyah. Now, some people actually even said that this treaty is not, why have you done this? Why have you made this treaty? They questioned the Imam. But remember, the Prophet made a treaty at Hudaybiyah, and certain prominent companions said, how can this be? How can he make this treaty with these pagans? But the Prophet understood that we cannot fight these pagans right now, because they were strong. We may be defeated. But after a few years, when the Prophet went back from Hudaybiyah, he trained the Muslims. The Muslims fought at Khaybar, and we know what Imam did at Khaybar. They got their morale, they boosted their appetite, and then they came and conquered Makkah. This was the fruits of Hudaybiyah. At the very time, individuals were saying, why? But within a few years, the fruits were there. He conquered Makkah. That was Imam al-Hasan. As you can see, every Imam acted according to their context and made the best of the context. They did not say that, I will take advantage of it for selfish gains. They could have. Many a time the Imam said to Muawiyah, Imam Ali said that what you are doing, I can do way better. I can do with great skill and great trickery. But I am not doing that, because this is not what we stand for. And as Khalil Gibran said about Imam Ali, قُتِلَ عَلِيٌّ لِشِدَّةِ عَدْلِهِ فِي مِحْرَابِ عِبَادَتِهِ. That just sums it up, that Mawla Ali alayhi salam was murdered because of the extremeness of his justice in the niche of prayer. So that was that. And then we come to whom we're here for whose remembrance becomes the pivot of our identity and the pivot of our struggle against all tyranny and desire for justice. All justice-loving people, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he rose up. His very nature did not allow him to stay quiet. There were so many people in Makkah saying, Imam, do not go, do not do this. Family members, Abdullah bin Ja'far al-Tayyar, Muhammad al-Hanafiyyah, and various others were all saying, do not go, you will be killed. But the Imam's sort of desire for justice and his temperament did not allow him to stay quiet. And because things had reached such a stage, such a bad stage, he now had to act, and he arose and he came into the battlefield of Karbala. And he set that example. This was at the time of Imam al-Hussein. Straight after Imam al-Hussein, we see Imam Zainul Abidin. If the environment was not adequate, we would never have Sahifatul Sajjadiyah and the du'as he taught us. And then we come to Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, known as Sadiqain. The two founder big figures who feature in our jurisprudence, in our fiqh, and people who really gave our madhab or school of thought of the Ahlul Bayt its real identity, especially Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. The Umayyads were on their way out. They were about to finish after the Waqatul Hawa, when Yazid had occupied Makkah and he had horses stabled in Medina in the Prophet's mosque, and there were so many ills that were committed, it's unbelievable, they can't be mentioned. So many transgressions against women and everything were committed by those army of Yazid, including there were people who had fought at Karbala who were present there. And this is so interesting, some of those people met Imam Zainul Abidin. Imam Sajjad was in Medina at the time, they met him at the outskirts. They knew this is Imam Sajjad. Imam Sajjad actually gave them food, water, and lodging. They said, I think you do not recognize us. He said, I do recognize you. That is us. That is you in Karbala. This is us in Medina. This is our way we treat our guests. Anyhow, that's when the Umayyads were out and the Abbasids were coming in. This was the most prime time for any political power to go to the Ahlul Bayt. This was the most prime time for power to go to Ahlul Bayt. Why? Umayyads are going out, there's utter turmoil, the Abbasids want to get power. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq could get so many people, he could now become the powerhouse of the Ummah. But he didn't use that. He didn't use it for political gain. What did he do? He established the intellectual foundations of the school of Ahlul Bayt. 4,000 students, knowledge disseminated all over the world. Jabir bin Hayyan, Wasil bin Ataf, all these big figures in theology, philosophy. Why? The Imam knew this is the time for intellectual endeavor. This is the time to set the foundations. You see, there's people when there's turmoil, they want to jump for power. I want power, I want power. It's a big grab for power. But some of the clever people use that time to create a foundation of knowledge, of wisdom, and something that will last forever. Not political power, it just remains for a few days, it's gone. That is why we believe in an imama which was not usurped at Saqifa. Lam nusibat fil ghadir wala ghusibat fil Saqifa. It was not usurped at Saqifa, no, it was necessarily installed at Ghadir. Because this is coming from Ibrahim, Imama Ibrahimiyya. It is a existential, real reality which will last till the end of days. And anyhow, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, what did he do? He took advantage of the situation and it bore fruit because the amount of knowledge he disseminated, Islamic fiqh, Islamic law, Islamic philosophy, theology, alchemy, chemistry, biology, etc., flowered. Unbelievable, right? And we can go into all of the Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq is utterly a most amazing genius in the history of humanity. You know how if they looked at some of the things he said, a lot of these discoveries about the earth rotating around its axis, the sun rotating, the planets rotating around the moon, around the sun, the idea of gases, the 4 elements, which was Aristotelian, it was thrown out the window because gases contain oxygen. How the Imam explained oxidization and etc. How he explained how once he said the stars, somebody asked him, why are the stars fixed and they're not falling down onto the planet? The Imam says, get a stick with a rope and tie a rock to it and swing it around your head. He says, stop it. As soon as he stopped, it fell. The Imam said, because of that motion, rotation keeps them up in the sky. If there was no rotation, they would fall. Simple things. The Imam, some of the things that he spoke about, gases and astronomy and the stars and everything, Ptolemy, Copernicus, Galileo, all these people came afterwards, a long time afterwards. He once said that women should make their child sleep on their left side, a young child, a very young child. Why? People thought, hang on, this might crush the child if the mother turns. But it was discovered after some experiments that at the left side is the mother's heartbeat. The heart is on the left side. When a very young child sleeps on the left side of the mother, the child is very much through the fetus is connected to the beating of the mother's heart. It synchronizes with it. And that synchrony creates a great deal of calmness and peace within the child. And that is well known. That was Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Wrapping up here now, final few minutes before the Messiah. Imam Rida. He was in Medina. Remember, 10 Imams out of, or actually 11 Imams were all born in Medina. They were in Medina amongst all other Ahlul Bayt, the elites, right? People, the family of Abbas, the family of Ja'far, etc., the Banu Hashim, other members, they were all there and they were interacting and knowledge was being disseminated. The Imams of the other sects like the Zaydiyya and others, they were interacting with the Imams of the 12 Imams of the our school, the Ahlul Bayt, which we say. And there's great exchange of knowledge going on here. And this is what the Ahlul Bayt were doing, that on top you had tyranny, oppression, murder, pomp, imperialism, royal palaces, all sorts of things going on. But inside, underneath, you had this conscience of the Ahlul Bayt, which was promoting and creating the knowledge, the ethics, the values, the worldview of Islam. This is the role of the Ahlul Bayt until the day of Qiyamah. They are the people who make sure that Islam in its truest form remains. That submission to God and the dignity of human beings. Imam al-Rida, couple of minutes. He left Medina. He had the ziyarah of the prophets there with him. He had the great institute that was instituted by his great-grandfather, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq there. He had the pomp and everything. It was like maybe, you know, you're in Najaf and the Hawza is there and the ziyarah of Imam Ali is there, and you say, why do you want to leave it and study at an institute in the UK maybe, right? But the Imam knew that for me to leave Medina and go to Khurasan, why did he go to Khurasan? Where Ma'mun was there and the Abbasid. Because intellectuals from all over the known world were coming to that region. They were atheists, they were astronomers from India, they were Greek philosophers, they were, because remember, Ma'mun set up the Bayt al-Hikmah, and all the Greek texts through Roman Christians were being translated into Arabic. So much Greek philosophical thought had come into Islam by then. There was so much going on in that region. It was a great flowering, intellectual flowering. And there, Imam Rida said, I am leaving Medina and going all the way to Khurasan. Why? And he even became the Waliul Ahad. Ma'mun said, you will be my successor. There were coins minted in the name of Imam al-Rida. You could see them, Google them. You will see coins that say Ma'mun and Waliul Ahad is al-Imam al-Rida Ali bin Musa. Anyway, the Imam took advantage of the time in the most positive and ethical way possible. How? If you read some of the words of Imam relating to medicine and philosophy, astronomy, everything, sciences and God and metaphysics, you would be absolutely shocked. So when we talk about the Imam Rida alayhi salam, there is him taking the fruits of the time by using wisdom, by using his God-given insight into the affairs. He could have said, okay, I want to be Waliul Ahad, but he did. He said, I'll accept it. But he knew there was some wisdom. He left Medina for a reason, for wisdom. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam left Medina for Mecca for a reason, because the circumstances. He had insight. There was nothing being done by pure whim or folly. Oh, I feel like going to Mecca. No, everything was calculated. Like the Quran, every word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in the Quran is utterly calculated. There is so much depth and mystery and meaning. It is in its place, perfect. No other word can be in its place. Similarly, every act of the Imam is like every word of the Quran. It is calculated, it is meaningful, it is purposeful, it is full of wisdom. So the Imam goes to Mecca. The Imam realizes that his blood will be spilt and there will be chaos within Mecca and the holy sanctuary would be defiled. So he decides to leave. He cuts short his pilgrimage and he goes to Medina, Karbala. And we see that with him came his women folk. And that with him came all the women folk. And at every aspect, at every place, we see that the spiritual charisma of Imam al-Hussein overpowered people who saw him. They were so desirous of being with him that even one sight, one look at the Imam was enough for them to say, no, we're not leaving this place, we want to be wherever you're going. This is how the son of Sayyidah Zahra came and spread light everywhere he went. Imam al-Hussein is camped in Karbala, a newly married man with his mother, a young person, newly married with his mother, a Christian. He is passing Karbala. He sees this man amongst other individuals, some of them whose faces are bright like the moon on a dark night, and some great, noble, charismatic figures. But he sees there's one individual amongst them who is so overpowering with his spiritual charisma. He inquires who this is. They say he is Hussein ibn Ali, the grandson of the Messenger of Allah. Now this Christian, his name was Wahab al-Kalbi. Not somebody we always recite about, but Wahab al-Kalbi. He's newly married, he's a Christian, he comes to the Imam, and he is so overawed by the individual that he asks why he's here. And he sees there's an army. There's an army besieging him. That there are people that with spears and arrows and everything, and he could see that these people are thirsty. They look far from home. The Imam explains the situation. This individual says, by God, I have never seen anyone with more charisma and spirituality than you. I will forsake my Christianity just because of you. Just by being in the presence of the Imam, he became a Muslim. He said, I will follow whatever religion you follow. But that was not enough. Wahab al-Kalbi on the day of Ashura, he asked for permission. The Imam, every time to every individual, he said, it's not your time. Children, he said to the children that children should not fight, but they pushed him. Wahab al-Kalbi takes permission. He goes and fights. He fights valiantly. At one point, the head of Wahab al-Kalbi is beheaded by the enemies. The head is beheaded and then it is thrown back. It is thrown back and the mother of Wahab al-Kalbi gets the head. And he says that any head that I have given in the way of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, that I do not want it, I have given it. She gets the head and throws it back. But we say, oh, the head of Imam al-Hussein that was paraded throughout the cities of Kufa and through Damascus, that where is the trampled body of Imam, and where is the beloved head of Imam, and where is the sister Zainab who is continuously seeing it on the spear. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein,
जबरदा सर से छीनी मैं सदा देती रही तू न आया गाजी जबरदा सर से छीनी मैं सदा देती रही तू न आया गाजी आले इमरान कहाँ और जिंदान कहाँ ये बहन कैद हुई तू न आया गाजी जबरदा सर से छीनी मैं सदा देती रही तू न आया गाजी हमको पानी न मिले तेरी खुशबू तो रहे तेरे बाजू न कटे चाहे मशकी जाच दे ये मगर हो ना सका तेरे बाजू है जुदा जबरदा सर से छिली मैं सदा देती रही तू न आया गाजी जबरदा सर से छिली मैं सदा देती रही तू न आया गाजी धूप में तू था शजर तुझसे आबाद था घर है बरहना मेरा सर, क्या नहीं तुझको खबर, ए अलमदार वफा इस बहन को बाखुदा, तुझसे ढारस की पड़ी तू न आया गाजी, जबरदा सर।
या हुसैन 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 वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा। कब ज़ैनब उजरी जंग करबला दी मुक गई, लुटिया दिया रे गावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा। की मैं शाम लजावा सजाद बीमारे, होश नहीं होंदी सुनो ऐसा खत लचारे, मैनू समझ नहीं आंदी वीरन दसां मैं कीवे, एनू मौत तो बचावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा। उठ तो मैं लत पिया पर रो नहीं सकदी, लाश ते पत्थरांदा मैं देर हतकदी, मेरे हथ पाबंद हैं कि वे लाश तो मैं तेरी पत्थरां नू हटावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा। बाबा किसिया विच असवाल लुकाए, हुकूमत ने रसिया दे सानू ज़ेवर पाए, मैं समझ इस शान देश है दिया भूखिया निरावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा। कब ज़ैनब उजरी जंग करबला दी मुक गई, लुटिया ने यार गावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाम नुजावा वीरना मैं तेरी कब्र बनावा, या शाह मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا حجة قائم المنتظر المهدي. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كل وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل صلاة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك طوعا وتمتيه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل